Hi there, in this video I'm going to show you how you can really activate your gluteus medius through a variety of leg positions. It's going to be based on the modified Pilates Scissors level 1, but this way it really gets the facilitation of that gluteus medius muscle working throughout range. Now the gluteus medius is, as it sounds, one of your glutes. It's one of the prime stabilizers for your hip complex when you're in stance phase on that leg and swing phase on the other. So it's really critical when you're doing anything up on your feet, particularly running, that muscle is not dysfunctional. When studies are being conducted on activation of that muscle using electromyography to work out how much muscle activation is happening through whatever you're doing, this technique has pretty much been shown consistently to be number one. So it gets the glute med working throughout hip flexion and extension, and therefore it's a really good exercise for runners. And I give it to my runners all the time, and it's in my Pilates for Runners program. There are different variations of this, but basically all you're going to need is a resistance band and something you can anchor that to securely. I'll get on to the specifics in just a moment. Grab your resistance band, get down into your rest position, lying on your back with your knees bent, and we'll start the tutorial for this modified scissors with this kind of glute med turbocharge. So in the normal modified scissors level 1, you're lying down on your back with your knees bent in your rest position. What I've got though is a resistance band which I've tied around this secure table leg, and it's got a nice loop. I'm just going to put the leg furthest away from the band through there and then get myself into position. Now when you're doing normal scissors, the other leg will be bent as well. It's just going to get in the way here, so we can slide that one flat and then get into a point where our start position pretty much is the knee in line. Now of course we want this safely and securely anchored. We don't want that pinging open at any point, so make sure that's done. If you've got an exercise loop, then you just thread it through itself, and that's an even more secure way of doing it. Of course, make sure whatever you're tying it onto is super sturdy as well. Now, we want to make sure that if we're thinking about the Pilates key elements and keeping a neutral pelvic position, particularly when we've got the band trying to pull the leg and therefore the pelvis and back across back to where it starts. So we want to resist that rotational force through the pelvic girdle. The hands can obviously help with that substantially just by placing them down either side. And then before we actually get into the movement sequence, we want to make sure that the tension on the band is pretty much where we want it. We don't want it slack, because then it's not really going to do much. But also, if you've got too much tension, you're going to find your knee is probably already wavering from side to side as you're really on that kind of tipping point of control. So you want to feel that you've got a pull, you want to feel like there's resistance throughout that lateral chain of the leg and hip, but there's just enough that you can control accurately. Now, even in this start position, I know that the gluteus medius, and a few other things of course, are working to resist the pull of the band, because if the band wins, they're dysfunctional, inactive, however you want to phrase it. So just by having our start position with that neutrality in the hip, the glute med is already primed and ready to go. From this point, anything we do is going to keep the glute med switched on all the way through that sequence. So if we perform the modified scissors level 1, which brings the gesture leg up to tabletop, in this position, the band is still pulling, the glute med must still be working, and then we place it back down. So here, think of the new kind of usual things you would think of, the normal things you think of as you're performing your movement. We want the foot and knee staying in line with the hip joint, and that's obviously very akin to that drive phase in running as the leg is coming forwards. So if we let the foot swing out or the knee get pulled in, we're losing that control that we're after. So this is where, just in this initial movement, you're making sure that you've got that lovely plane of movement, foot and knee staying in line. And what I love about resistance bands is, you know full well if you're going beyond the point of control, because either the band pulls you in or you start getting bouncing, fluctuating happening. So the tension on the band should remain constant whatever position you move your leg to. And of course when we're running, this leg's going to be, and walking of course, this leg's going to change position further. So if you're happy with that simple replication of the scissors level 1, we can start taking the foot further down away from us, going into more knee extension, more knee straightening, and we can progress that all the way through to a full leg straightened position. And this is great because the other leg is out of the way at this point. You could even come up into more hip flexion if you feel you can control your neutral pelvic position. No matter where I take my leg, it's got that medial force, that inward pull from the band, and my lateral chain, my gluteus medius predominantly, is having to resist that all the way through. So this is such a great exercise because it means wherever I place my leg, I'm getting that glute med facilitation. And it's just one of the best ways when things have been studied with electromyographical units and things, where you're looking at activation of the muscle in a given joint range. This one's been shown to really facilitate that glute med as well as anything else can. So I tend to start people lying flat on their back because there's just less to worry about. Fairly obviously, you can perform this in standing as well, and then it becomes a more functional exercise because you're using the core stability mechanisms you'd use when you're up on your feet. But if you're starting off, just take it on your back so that you can really focus on that control. Once you've got that, by all means, progress to the standing variation if you prefer. So, gluteus medius, as I said in the intro, is a super important muscle. It can become dysfunctional for a number of reasons. I think the parting thing I would say in this video is please leave things like the Clam alone. It's not a very helpful exercise in any way, shape or form. It's actually quite antagonistic in lots of ways, and it's not very running specific either. This one, very kind of running specific drill, so that's why it's in my Pilates for Runners program, and hopefully you get as much benefit out of it as the evidence base would suggest, and certainly from what I have gained from it personally, but also far more importantly with clients have helped. So use this to really get that glute med activation through range of movement, and it should prove really helpful.